Some bonds can't be broken, not by time, not by distance, not even by death. For years, Officer Joe Reynolds and his K-9 partner, Duke, were inseparable. Together, they had faced the darkest corners of the city, chasing down criminals, saving lives, and forging a bond that went far beyond duty. Even after Duke retired, he remained by Joe's side, loyal, devoted, waiting for the next call. But now, both were fighting battles they couldn't win. Joe, confined to a hospital bed, his body weakened by illness. And Duke, lying on a steel examination table, his once mighty frame fading with age. Separated by miles, they should have faced the end alone. Then, Duke let out a howl, a sound so haunting, so filled with longing, that it carried beyond the walls of the clinic, beyond the city streets, and straight to Joe's heart. What happened next defied explanation. This is a story of love, loyalty, and the unbreakable bond between a man and his dog. A bond that refused to be silenced, even in their final moments together. Dying elderly K-9 German Shepherd howls for his owner. What happens next is heartbreaking. The autumn sun cast long shadows through the windows of Cedar Grove Veterinary Clinic, painting golden stripes across the examination room floor. On the steel table lay Duke, once the pride of the Boston Police Department's K-9 unit, now a graying 13-year-old German Shepherd whose battle-scarred body told stories of a lifetime of service. His chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, each one a struggle against the growing weakness in his aged frame. Dr. Sarah Mitchell watched the old dog with a heavy heart, her practiced hands gentle as she checked his vitals one final time. After 30 years as a veterinarian, these moments never got easier. Duke's advanced kidney failure had progressed rapidly over the past week, and his current suffering left little choice but to consider humane euthanasia. "I'm so sorry, Emily," she said softly to the young woman standing nearby. Officer Emily Reynolds, who had been caring for Duke since her father Joe's recent hospitalization. "His kidneys are shutting down completely. Even with aggressive treatment, we'd only be prolonging his pain." Emily nodded, fighting back tears as she stroked Duke's graying muzzle. At 32, she had followed in her father's footsteps to become a police officer, growing up with Duke as a constant presence in their home. "I understand. I wish Dad could be here." Duke's been his partner for so long. The thought of her father, lying in a hospital bed across town losing his own battle with pancreatic cancer, made Emily's throat tighten. Joe Reynolds and Duke had been inseparable for 8 years on the force, and even after Duke's retirement 4 years ago, the bond between Handler and K-9 had remained unbreakable. Now, cruel fate seemed determined to take them both. Dr. Mitchell prepared the injection with practiced care, her movements deliberate and gentle. "Would you like a few minutes alone with him?" Emily nodded, pulling up a chair beside the examination table. As the veterinarian stepped out, Emily leaned close to Duke's ear, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've been the best dog anyone could ask for, Duke. Dad loves you so much. I love you so much." Duke's tail thumped weakly against the table at the sound of her voice, his clouded brown eyes struggling to focus on her face. Then, suddenly, his ears pricked forward and his entire body tensed. What happened next would be remembered by everyone in the clinic that day. The howl that erupted from Duke's throat was unlike anything Emily had ever heard from him before. Not the alert bark of his working days, nor the happy greeting he'd give when Joe came home. This was something primal, a sound of pure anguish and longing that seemed to reach across the very fabric of space and time. It echoed through the clinic's corridors, causing other dogs to fall silent, and brought Dr. Mitchell running back into the room. 3 miles away, in room 412 of Boston General Hospital, Joe Reynolds opened his eyes. The 58-year-old former K-9 handler had been drifting in and out of consciousness for days, his once robust frame ravaged by late-stage cancer. The doctors had given him weeks at most. His wife Margaret sat beside him, reading quietly from his favorite novel, when Joe suddenly gripped her hand with unexpected strength. "Duke," he said, his voice hoarse but urgent. "Something's wrong with Duke." Margaret exchanged worried glances with their younger daughter Sarah, who had been dozing in a chair by the window. "Joe, honey, you need to rest. Emily's taking care of Duke, remember?" But Joe was already trying to sit up, fighting against the weakness in his limbs with a determination they hadn't seen in weeks. "No, you don't understand. He needs me. I can feel it. I have to go to him." "Dad, please." Sarah stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You're not strong enough to dash. Get me a wheelchair," Joe interrupted, his voice taking on the commanding tone that had served him through 25 years on the force. "Either help me, or I'll crawl there myself." Margaret recognized the look in her husband's eyes, the same unwavering determination she'd seen the night he'd carried Duke 2 miles through a snowstorm after the dog had been injured during a pursuit. She pressed the call button for the nurse. What followed was a flurry of activity and argument. Dr. Harrison, Joe's oncologist, strongly advised against moving him. The exertion could accelerate his decline, potentially cutting precious days from the little time he had left. But there was something in Joe's desperate insistence that gave even the medical staff pause. "I've been a doctor for 20 years, Dr. Harrison finally said, running a hand through his gray hair. "And sometimes there are things we can't explain, things that matter more than medical protocols." He turned to the nurse. "Get a transport team ready, and call ahead to Cedar Grove Vet Clinic. Let them know we're coming." The next 45 minutes were a race against time. As they loaded Joe into the medical transport van, his vitals were dangerously unstable. Margaret rode with him, holding his hand, while Sarah followed in her car. Through it all, Joe remained focused on a single thought: getting to Duke. At the veterinary clinic, Emily paced the examination room floor. After Duke's haunting howl, Dr. Mitchell had agreed to wait, though she warned that prolonging the inevitable would only extend his suffering. The old German shepherd lay quiet now, his breathing labored but steady, as if gathering his remaining strength for something important. When the clinic's front door chimed, Emily rushed out to find her mother and sister helping guide a wheelchair through the entrance, followed by 2 paramedics with portable medical equipment. Her father sat slumped in the chair, oxygen tubes in his nose, but his eyes were alert and searching. "Where is he?" Joe's voice was barely above a whisper. Emily led them to the examination room, where Duke's ears immediately perked up at the sound of approaching wheels. As Joe's wheelchair crossed the threshold, something remarkable happened. The old dog's tail began to thump against the table with growing strength, and his clouded eyes brightened with recognition. Dr. Mitchell stepped back in amazement as Duke, who had barely been able to lift his head moments ago, pushed himself up to a sitting position. His gaze never left Joe's face. The paramedics helped position Joe's wheelchair right beside the examination table. With trembling hands, he reached out to stroke the fur that had grown coarse with age, just as Duke leaned forward to nuzzle the familiar hands that had trained him, guided him, and loved him through so many years of service and retirement. "Hey, old friend," Joe's voice cracked with emotion. "I heard you calling." The room fell silent except for the soft beeping of medical monitors and the gentle whoosh of oxygen. Everyone present could sense they were witnessing something extraordinary, a connection that transcended ordinary understanding. For the next hour, Joe sat with Duke, speaking softly to him about their years together. He recalled their first day of K9 training, when the rambunctious young shepherd had nearly pulled Joe's arm out of its socket. The night they had cornered an armed suspect in an abandoned warehouse, Duke's courage never wavering. The countless quiet evenings at home, Duke's head resting on Joe's lap as they watched old movies together. As Joe talked, Duke's breathing gradually became easier, as if each shared memory brought him peace. The dog's eyes, though clouded with age, remained fixed on his partner's face with unwavering devotion. Margaret stood behind Joe's wheelchair, one hand on his shoulder, while their daughters huddled close. Dr. Mitchell and her staff found themselves lingering nearby, drawn by the palpable love that filled the room. Finally, Joe's voice grew hoarse, and his strength began to fade. The paramedics exchanged worried glances as they checked his vitals. Duke seemed to sense the change, lifting his head to gently lick Joe's hand one last time. "It's okay, boy," Joe whispered, leaning close to Duke's ear. "You can rest now. You've been the best partner anyone could ask for. The best friend. I'll see you soon." As if he had been waiting for those words, Duke let out a soft sigh. His tail thumped once more against the table, and then, with his eyes still locked on Joe's face, the brave old K9 took his final breath. The room remained silent for a long moment, broken only by quiet sobs. Then Joe, his own breathing becoming more labored, asked to be taken back to the hospital. As they wheeled him out, he reached for Margaret's hand. "Thank you," he whispered, "for understanding why I had to come." Joe Reynolds passed away peacefully in his sleep that night, less than 6 hours after saying goodbye to his faithful partner. The doctors were amazed he had found the strength to make the journey to the clinic at all. But those who had witnessed the reunion understood that some bonds run deeper than physical strength alone. The story of Duke and Joe's final goodbye spread quickly through the law enforcement community. At their joint memorial service a week later, hundreds of police officers and their K9 partners came to pay their respects. The Boston Police Department's K9 unit performed a ceremonial last call for both handler and dog, and a line of German shepherds stood at attention as the flag-draped coffin and Duke's urn were carried past. Emily, following the service, found Dr. Mitchell waiting quietly at the back of the church. "I've been a vet for 3 decades, the doctor said, wiping away tears. "I've seen thousands of animals pass on, but I've never witnessed anything like that day with Duke and your father. It was as if they were holding on for each other, waiting to make that final journey together." Margaret, overhearing the conversation, nodded softly. "Joe always said Duke wasn't just a dog, or even just a partner. He used to tell me that some souls are meant to find each other, to walk through life side by side. And when it's time, they know." The legend of Duke and Joe's extraordinary bond became a story passed down through generations of K9 handlers at the Boston Police Department. New recruits would hear about the old German shepherd who held on through sheer love and determination to say goodbye to his handler, and the handler who found the strength to answer his partner's call one last time. But for the Reynolds family, it was more than just a legend. It was a testament to the depth of love possible between humans and animals, a reminder that some connections transcend the ordinary boundaries of species and circumstance. In the years that followed, Emily would often find herself pausing during K9 training sessions with her own police dog, remembering the look of recognition and joy in Duke's eyes when Joe entered that examination room. The clinic now bears a small bronze plaque in the examination room where Duke and Joe said their final goodbyes. It reads simply, "In memory of K9 Duke and Officer Joe Reynolds, partners in life, united in legend." And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the autumn sun paints those same golden stripes across the floor, the staff swear they can still feel the presence of an extraordinary love that refused to be bounded by time or space or even death itself. Sarah Reynolds, who had followed her father's example and become a K9 trainer, often tells new handlers about that day. "It's easy to think of K9 work as just training and commands," she explains. "But what Dad and Duke showed us is that it's really about 2 hearts beating as one. It's about a trust and love so deep that even when words fail, even when strength fades, the connection remains unbroken." The story of Duke and Joe became more than just a tale of a K9 and his handler. It became a reminder of the extraordinary capacity for love and loyalty that exists in all beings, and the mysterious ways in which that love can transcend our understanding. In police departments across the country, their story is shared as a testament to the special bond between K-9 officers and their four-legged partners, a bond that, in Duke and Joe's case, proved stronger than death itself. Today, visitors to the Boston Police Department's K-9 training facility will find a photograph hanging in the main hallway. It shows a younger Joe Reynolds and Duke in their prime, the handler's hand resting proudly on his partner's back, both of them alert and ready for duty. Below the photo is a quote Joe once shared during a rookie training session. "A K-9 partner gives you their whole heart. The least we can do is give them ours in return." And in a quiet corner of Rolling Hills Pet Cemetery, two markers stand side by side. One holds Duke's ashes, the other a portion of Joe's, together even in rest. The inscription reads, "Partners in life, partners in death, partners in eternity." Some bonds can never be broken. The legacy of Duke and Joe lives on in every K-9 team that passes through training, in every handler who learns to trust their four-legged partner with their life, and in every dog who gives their whole heart to their human companion. Their story reminds us that true love knows no boundaries, that loyalty can overcome any obstacle, and that sometimes, just sometimes, the most powerful connections we forge in life are strong enough to echo into eternity. Emily Reynolds still visits their graves every year on the anniversary of that remarkable day. She brings her own K-9 partner, a young German shepherd named Hope, and tells her the story of Duke and Joe. And as the sun sets over the cemetery, casting long shadows across the peaceful grounds, she swears she can sometimes hear, carried on the evening breeze, the faint echo of a joyful bark and warm laughter. Two partners, two friends, together forever in the endless dance of love and loyalty that transcends all boundaries of time and space.